Window Nation, the star of Window Report.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us here on StarTelegram.com for another edition of Dallas Cowboys Overtime. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel. I forgot how to speak. That gentleman to the other side of the screen is Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr., who will no doubt be bragging, boasting about his basketball team that he suddenly cares about a lot more than the football team. But we're not going to get into that real now. We're going to do this later because obviously the topic du jour of the Dallas Cowboys here on Cowboys Overtime, sponsored by Window Nation, is that they actually decided to do something to make their team better this offseason as opposed to just standing pat and signing nobody. Clarence, we got a handful of moves the Cowboys have actually made, trades. They trade for veteran wide receiver Brandon Cooks. They trade for veteran defensive back Stephon Gilmore from the Colts. They keep linebacker Leighton Van Esch. They keep safety Donovan Wilson. They kept Cooper Rush. They kept C.J. Goodwin. Clarence, can you believe it? They actually did this?
Well, as I wrote eloquently in the Star Telegram this morning, hell, is that you? Are you freezing over? Is that ice in Arlington again? What is going on? What's going on? For the first time,
let's go first. Let's go. Obviously, the big one is Brandon Cooks, veteran wide receiver. Cowboys traded some draft picks to later round draft picks to the Texans to get Brandon Cooks, who has been a very good pro wide receiver for a handful of years. Played with the Rams, played the Texans, a bad Texans team. Clarence, you said something, I think, on either on one of your columns or on Twitter, that you think acquiring Brandon Cooks is the Cowboys recognize that they misread the free agent market or the wide receiver market last year when they traded away Amari Cooper for a bucket of used footballs. Is it that, or do you think they misread their own talent on their roster at wide receiver to potentially replace his production?
Well, I think they go hand in hand. I mean, it was a mistake to get rid of Amari Cooper. It was a double down, bigger mistake when you didn't do anything to replace him. And the Cowboys made a tacit admission of that throughout all last season when they tried to move heaven and earth to find all the other receivers. And they tried to trade for Brandon Cooks before the trade deadline last year. They got into the OBJ sweepstakes. They finally signed T.Y. Hilton. I mean, I've been screaming since the beginning of training camp last year that the receiving core was subpar. It was CD and a bunch of maybes. Mm-hmm. Going into the season, week in and week out, they had one of the worst collection of receiving groups on the field, and it was their problem. And it was a problem for Dak Prescott. It was a problem for this offense. And it certainly reared its ugly head in that playoff loss to the 49ers when after Tony Pollard got hurt, they had one viable weapon, one viable threat that scared any other team. That was CeeDee Lamb. They had nothing else. And so they certainly went into this offseason with the purpose of adding to the receiver group. As Stephen Jones told us at the Combine, we need to add juice to the offense, juice in the receiving core. And thus we have the Brandon Cooks trade. The guy they wanted is way back, again, last year before the trade deadline, because his speed, they've never had a guy that, at least in the recent iterations of the Cowboys, a speed guy that can take the top off the defense and really go down the field. And this is what he brings to complement what you have with a Michael Gallup and a CeeDee Lamb.
So, Clarence, before I get into what Brandon Cooks can do, does this mean the Cowboys are completely out of the Odell Beckham Jr. I don't even call it sweepstakes, but is their interest in Odell Beckham Jr. now gone?
Yeah, it's over. And really, I think that it was really more of a figment in Jerry Jones's mind and his marketing mind to keep it alive. Because Jerry Jones likes to talk about things just to keep the Cowboys name in the news and headlines and everything else. talking to people behind the scenes. There was no one else in the organization who were focused on Odell Beckham. It was only Jerry Jones. And as he told us at the combine last month, the only talks he's had with anybody from Odell Beckham's group was with his mother at the Super Bowl at the NFL Honors. They have not had any direct talks with Odell Beckham since the end of the season. So why are we talking about this interest in Odell Beckham when no one's actually talked to his people? But it makes for good headlines, it makes for good conversation. The Cowboys involved, and so we're still talking about the Cowboys, and there's still money going in Jerry Jones' pocket, I suppose.
Clarence, in terms of what you talked about, what Brandon Cooks gives them in terms of a deep threat and maybe taking some of the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb underneath. He's 29. What's the high end for Brandon Cooks right now?
Well, if you just cut on the tape and you watch some of the tape last year, he can still get down the field. He's still a threat, and he's not being asked to be the number one receiver. He has to be the number 2A, 3 receiver here with Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. And the fact that he still represents that threat and can get down the field. Again, he had 4 catches of 30 or more yards last year with Texas in limited time with some horrible quarterbacking.
I was going to say, and who was his quarterback?
And playing 13 games. The Cowboys had 4 as a team. And one of them was from T.Y. Hilton.
Right, one was T.Y., that bomb on 3rd and 30 against the Eagles.
So,
all right, well, then let's go with the other.
He helps this team.
So let's go with the other additions. Obviously, one of the real concerns that this team had in the second half of last season was their cornerback play opposite Trayvon Diggs. Now, I don't know why, but killing Trayvon Diggs has become kind of a fan favorite around the Cowboys. He's really good. So he's your solid number 1 cover corner. Now, he takes a lot of risk, but he makes a lot of plays. So you've got Trayvon Diggs. Does adding Gilmore for the Colts, does at least solve that problem, Clarence? Or in your mind, does Gilmore, given his age, still have something to prove and potentially could be supplanted by somebody else on this roster or maybe even a draft pick?
I mean, Gilmore looked pretty good last year. I think he had 1 or 2 picks against Dak Prescott last year. In the game against the Colts. He can still play. He's not the defensive player of the year that he once was, but he's better than Anthony Brown. He's better than anybody the Cowboys have put out there at cornerback. And you add him to what he can do and his ability to play and cover, continue to cover, to go with Trayvon Diggs. And you have one of the better cornerback tandems in the league. I don't know if you can go down the list of the league and look at the cornerback tandems, maybe outside of Miami, which has a nice tandem now, to say that there's a better group of cornerbacks than what the Cowboys are going to be playing with, not even Philadelphia, and then you add that, I'll just piggyback on that, you add that with what the Cowboys have at safety, their ability to re-sign Donovan Wilson, continue that 3-headed safety group. Those 3 safeties, which are solid and very good and key to this defense because they play that big nickel scheme with those 3 safeties starting to go along with these 2 cornerbacks. This secondary is quite good. I don't know if one of the Cowboys have had a secondary this talented.
Where does this put Kelvin Joseph? I mean, he was a high pick. I mean, he's obviously had some off-the-field issues. He really wasn't that good when he did play. Now they've added a veteran who obviously is going to start. Is his future with the Cowboys pretty much over?
He's a special teams guy. He's still under contract. I mean, they like him on special teams, but I don't think that they're looking to play him in the defense. Deron Bland, a rookie out of Fresno, came on and played well last year to get Jordan Lewis back. They could still draft a cornerback. Gilmore is 33 in the last year of his contract. So we're not really worried much about Kelvin Joseph and where he fits, in this secondary. He's a special teams guy, and he's a guy who could get cut in training camp.
Let's go over the 2 other guys they did sign, because I think when we were on here on Cowboys Overtime talking about this subject a couple of weeks ago, I don't think either you or myself were very optimistic the Cowboys would re-sign Leighton Vander Esch. They gave him a 2-year deal. I think we both thought that there was a very good possibility that Donovan Wilson, the safety out of Texas A&M, who's developed so nicely here the last couple of years, that he was going to get a bigger money someplace else and that he would leave. The Cowboys kept them both. Clarence, 1 out of 10, 10 being most surprised. Where was your reaction when they kept both those guys? 8, 9, 10?
It was probably about an 8, but once you saw the market, and one thing is this has been it's been a depressed market,
Mm-hmm.
especially for safeties. You saw what happened to Charlie Garner Johnson with the Eagles, who was one of the top playmaking safeties in the league. And, he basically had to sign a 1-year deal with Detroit after getting kind of squeezed out money while I was in Philadelphia. And, they've been crying about that on Twitter the last couple of days. But it's the money is not there. Just like, and the same thing with Leighton. He thought he was going to get big money elsewhere, and he certainly didn't get that. On the market, so he was able to come back. He wanted to stay here anyway. And you can look at beyond those guys. Let's look at the tight end, Dalton Schultz, who
Dalton Schultz is gone. Yep.
1-year deal up to $9 million with the Houston Texans, and we thought the market was going to be big for him. So the market, basically brought those guys back to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys couldn't be happier because Leighton Vander Esch, those were the top 2 tackles on the team last year, and they certainly wanted them back in the lineup.
Quick question before we go on to our next topic. We got a question from Stephen Martinez here. We had all these different ideas of priorities, and the Cowboys actually addressed it with cornerback and wide receiver. So now that they've attended to linebacker, now that they've attended to Donovan Wilson, they reworked Tyron Smith's contract. Clarence, in your mind, what are the big priorities now for this team to try to get better before the start of the 2023 season?
Well, the goal in the offseason is it's certainly afraid it's just to fill holes so you don't have to reach in the draft. You want to get guys signed. And the Cowboys actually made a signing on Tuesday morning. They signed a guard, Chuma Edoga. He's the
Good
first.
for you. You pronounced his name. I couldn't have done it.
Chuma, yeah, he's the first outside free agent signing for the Cowboys. And he's going to give them an option to start at left guard and certainly give some depth. He's a guard tackle. He's a former 3rd-round pick of the Jets. He's just 25 years old. He's a big boy. So he's going to give them some versatility on that offensive line. And that's what they want. Certainly the running back position, the wide receiver position, the cornerback positions, all positions that can continue to take in the draft. That running back to me is a blinking light, hey, there's a hole there, and there's a guy there that maybe in the first round it could be coming to him. The Cowboys certainly brought in Jones, former running back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, played at USC from McKinney to visit yesterday. He could sign to give them some depth there, and again, so they won't have to force the running back in the draft. So they're going to continue to look at running back. I think tight end is a position they can focus on. Interior defensive line. I've said this. They need a big house in the middle. You cannot be a great defense without a big house in the middle. And as great as the defense has been, they do not have a big run stuffing defensive lineman, and that's what they need. I think that's something that they should be focused on and look at.
They've had pluggers. They've had guys. They've had pluggers. They've had decent pros, but they haven't anybody. Clarence, the last time I can remember they had somebody in the middle who made a difference was probably Jay Ratliff.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and you always look for pass rushers. So they still could bring back Dante Fowler or look for another type pass rusher there. So the Cowboys don't. They want to. They got these guys so they don't have to force things in the draft, but they can use depth and use help at all those positions still. As the Cowboys continue to work their way through free agency and look forward to the draft. And the good news about these draft picks, they make those trades. They still have a pick in each of the first all 7 rounds of the draft. Most of the picks they traded were compensatory picks, so they still have 7 picks, 1 pick in each round. They can still fill their roster out and make some good selections in the draft.
All right, let's hit on this one topic real quick before we break for a word from Window Nation. Clarence, the Cowboys said they weren't going to do it, but we all knew they were lying, and then they went ahead and did it. They officially waived running back Ezekiel Elliott. What will, 2 things real quick. One, I don't think any of us is surprised. Was there any realistic, plausible scenario where they were going to bring him back?
No.
None. Even if he had played for veteran minimum, was that off the table?
I don't even think they made him an offer for a pay cut, and so that's my conversations, with his people and them, since the end of the season. Yes, they were saying all the right things about how they can make it work, but they never really talked numbers. They never really got to that point to bring it back. And I just didn't see a path forward. You you needed to make Tony Pollard the featured back. You need to, discontinue the farce that Zeke was the number one back. Tony Pollard was the primary back on this team. He needed to be starting. And then how do you find a role for Zeke as a backup? And what number is palatable for both sides to make that happen, especially a backup who doesn't play special teams. So, it was going to be tough finding that role and finding the path forward. Now, Zeke needs to find out where he can get and find a place for a new home. He can still play. He has scored 12 touchdowns last year. Great short yardage runner. He certainly has a nose for the end zone. He needs to, now it's a matter of where will be his next stop. Certainly Tampa Bay is an option because that's where Skip Pete is, and they need running backs. There's been talk about it in Buffalo, but so far there's been no movement on Zeke in the free agent front.
No, I would imagine that's gonna take some time. Real quick, Ring of Honor player, yes or no for Zeke Elliott?
Well, that's a tough one. You got Dez Bryant out there. You got Tony Romo out there. You still got Everson Walls out there who should be in the Ring of Honor. I mean, there's a number of guys. We it's a recency bias. We're talking about Zeke and, certainly the 2 rushing titles and everything you brought here. But, if you put Zeke in, why is Tutal not in? Why is Everson Walls not in?
Yeah,
why Dez Bryant not getting? He's the all-time leading pass for a touchdown leader in the franchise history. What do you do?
It's a tough one. You're right. It's a tough one. You can make a strong argument that in his time, he was as good a running back as that they ever played for the Cowboys. And in terms of, in his limited, in that time, obviously he's not in
3 years.
Hang on.
3-4 year window.
That 3 or 4 year window, he was outstanding. But you looked at Tony Dorsett, he played for a longer period of time. Emmett was a horse for a long, long time, but it certainly will be a debate that comes up just given his numbers. Okay, we've got a little bit long here. We've got more to talk about here on Cowboys Overtime, but first, a word from our good friends at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no payments and pay no interest until 2025. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, thank you very much, Window Nation. Back here on StarTelegram.com's Cowboys Overtime. I am Mac Engel. That's Clarence E. Hill Jr. Clarence, now that the Cowboys have gone out of their way to upgrade their team in the offseason as opposed to just sit around and do nothing, we can actually have this conversation now, and it actually feels like it's appropriate. NFC has lost a lot of good quarterbacks over the last few years. Aaron Rodgers looks like he will be traded to the New York Jets. Tom Brady has retired. You and I have talked about this before. Is Dak Prescott, you can make a strong argument. Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the NFC. Let's take it a step further now. With all the roster moves that the Cowboys have made, upgrades, adding Stephon Gilmore, and having Brandon Cooks at wide receiver, where do you think the Cowboys line up in terms of a Super Bowl contender out of the NFC?
Well, I think they're third. They're solid third behind Philadelphia and San Francisco, and certainly San Francisco is a number one. I think they've upgraded their team. They got Jonathan Hargrove of
Washington
from the Eagles, defensive tackle, to improve that team. They're going to get their quarterbacks back. Certainly, Philadelphia lost. They took a lot of hits in free agency. They lost a lot of players, but they still have. They did retain some, and they still have. A lot of premium. They have 2 first-round picks, but the Cowboys have 1. They still have ways in the draft to get better. And I think they're the Cowboys, and I think they're right there. Again, Dak Prescott, I would say you look at the quarterbacks in the NFC once Aaron Rodgers is gone, who's the best quarterback in the NFC? Who is that?
I said it.
Body of work is Dak Prescott from one season is Jalen Hurts, right?
No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. But if you look, I've never been a big Kirk Cousins fan, and I give him a lot of credit for what he's done to have that career that he's had, because I don't think he's that good. But he's, you got to give him some credit, but I don't think he's going to scare anybody when Minnesota makes the playoffs. I think Matt Stafford, it'll be interesting to see what he looks like and what the Rams look like when he comes back. That team has dramatically changed from when they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. If you go down the list, are you buying Derek Carr with the Saints? I'm not. I'm just not. No. I think he's better. Daniel Jones, the Giants. Are you buying the Giants? Clarence, I think you're right. I think if you look at the very top teams now, I think the line behind Dallas, San Francisco, and Philadelphia is still pretty big. And I know other teams, somebody will surprise you, somebody will come out of nowhere. It always happens.
And the Giants have gotten better. I mean, getting the tight end to go with Daniel Jones and go with their running back, they've gotten better. I just don't think they're at the Cowboys level yet.
Neither do I. But you're right, they've improved. But there's nobody else that I see. Tampa Bay is going to take a major step.
The Lions are continuing to get better too.
The Lions, that's the one team.
At the end of last season,
they really did. And obviously, Jared Goff seems to have figured some things out where whatever bugs in the system that existed that made the Rams want to dump him, he looked a lot better. The Lions overall look better. They've upgraded their roster. That could be a team that's going to scare people. The Bears, no. The Packers, no. You go down the line. I just think that dividing line is still every bit as heavy today as it was when the season ended. The playoffs ended, that is, and it's still 49ers, it's Dallas, and Philly. Okay, let's go on to one more topic here on Cowboys Overtime that is not necessarily Cowboys related, but it certainly is Texas related. All right, Clarence, here's your time. I'm going to get sick a little bit. My alma mater, the team that won the national championship in men's basketball last year. See that? You see that, Clarence? You see that?
Wave the week.
Right, all the way to a national championship last year. However, my beloved undergrad Jayhawks lagged away a double-digit second-half lead against Arkansas in the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament, which means now there are only 2 teams from the Big 12 remaining in the NCAA tournament, the Sweet 16. There are 2 teams from the state of Texas now, and they could potentially meet each other in the Elite Eight. Clarence, your beloved Rodney Terry-led Longhorns are the 3 seed. They advanced to play number 3 seed Xavier and Sean Miller, because he didn't do anything wrong, on Friday night. And they will play the winner in the Elite Eight of Houston versus Miami. Whoever in the Elite Eight, that game would be on Sunday to go to the Final Four in Houston. You and I talked about whether or not Texas should make interim head coach Rodney Terry the full-time head coach. I think that's going to happen now. And I got to tell you, I could see, Rodney Terry said it after TCU beat Texas here in Fort Worth a few weeks ago. This team can win the national championship. It is the perfectly built team for a March run. They're long. They've got good scores. They're good. Are you buying it? Are you feeling it? Are you feeling a national championship or a Final Four in you that they're going to pull the Nick Foles and get back to the Final Four?
I am feeling it because they win in so many different ways. They won the first game by shooting 8 threes. They won the second game. They only made 1 3. They can play any style. They play defense. They have scores. They have big men. They have guards. This is a deep team, and so they have what it takes to win. But there are no easy outs now. Xavier's good. They're the 4 seed. They're good, and then you have Houston. Or Miami, and again, the showdown with Houston would be legendary. It's a shame that they couldn't meet in the Final Four, and they'd have to meet in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. It'd be great to see 2 Texas teams, in the Final Four competing in Houston next weekend. The team that I I think has a great chance of getting to the Final Four, Kansas State. That draw they have is really good. They played Michigan State. They're good, and the way they beat, it wasn't that they beat Kentucky. It was at the way they beat Kentucky. They closed them out. They made plays at winning time. They hit big shots. Kansas State's the other Big 12 team. I think you're exactly right. Kansas State is a definite threat, and then the other one that I've liked before the tournament started is UCLA. Now this tournament, this field is wide open. It's wide open.
You've got 11 conferences in the Sweet 16. I don't think any other than UCLA, I don't think anybody here has won a national championship before. Texas hasn't been to the Final Four in a long, long time. Houston got close with Phi Slama Jama in the 80s. They've got a really good team. Houston rather. Sorry about that. But the team that I like is UCLA a lot. I like Jaime Jaquez a lot. He's a senior. He's one of those sort of tweener players that gives guards fits and they can score around big guys. I still like UCLA, but is there anybody You
Alabama,
like Kansas State?
Alabama's probably been the best and played the best, and they got the cloud over their head with Miller and stuff. But
Alabama's the most talented team. I think Alabama's the most
certainly the most talented team. But yeah, anybody can win. It's going to be wide open. I'd love to see Texas get there. Let us see if Rodney Terry, and I think you're right. He's going to get the job regardless.
One more thing I did want to bring up, because I think there's one guy in the remaining Sweet 16 whose influence in the state of college basketball, in the state of Texas, it never got its full due. And that's Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes is now the head coach at the University of Tennessee. He was a longtime head coach at Texas. And what Guy Lewis had done at Houston to make Texas college basketball relevant, obviously brought a lot of energy and excitement to the sport that hadn't, that's sort of been missing. And then Guy retired. And then Rick Barnes came into Texas. He got TJ Ford. He got Kevin Durant. He made Texas basketball a thing. And then obviously other coaches have come into the state, whether it's Chris Beard at Texas Tech, Jamie Dixon at TCU, Larry Brown for a while at SMU. Scott Drew's done a phenomenal job at Baylor. But what are your thoughts as a Texas guy about what Rick Barnes has done in Knoxville with the Volunteers?
Yeah, I'm happy for Rick. He's always been a solid coach. The question was, was he a tournament coach? And outside of that Durant run and not Durant run, outside the TJ Ford run, he never really had a huge run in the tournament. And before this season, that was the same talk was at Tennessee, because he was a great regular season coach. And he made a football school, a basketball school, and got people coming to the games. Could never really get over the hump. So it's good for him that he's here and he's in the Sweet 16 with a chance to go to the Final Four.
All right, last question for you as a Texas fan. And you mentioned, you made Tennessee a basketball school. Obviously, Texas A&M is more of a baseball school now.
Are they?
Yeah. I would think
I thought it was poultry judging. Poultry
judging. Are we at that place now, the Longhorns? You can say the Longhorns is probably a basketball school.
Basketball, volleyball, track, tennis, golf, Scotty Scheffler, we're versatile, we win that.
I know you're a big Sears Directors Cup guy.
We got the Directors Cup. It's because he's coming back for a third straight year, baby.
Bijan Robinson, is he going to be a Cowboy? Yes or no?
He visited the Eagles yesterday. I don't think he's going to get there at 26. The Cowboys want him. They're going to have to go up and get him, and I don't think you trade up for a running back.
Wow, good stuff. All right, this has been a lot of fun. Clarence, good luck to you this weekend when Texas plays Xavier. That's on Friday. Late night Friday. This has been fun. For all of your Cowboys coverage needs, be sure to check out Clarence on StarTelegram.com. He's done a great job as always. And we will see you next week here on Cowboys Overtime.